questionnaires completed by pastors, potential pastors. And out of those 15, we have had 5 further interviews, so what we do is we initially have an initial interview, and then the questionnaires come back, and then we have a bigger interview with the entire search committee. So we have had 5 of those. 2 of those that we've had 2 of the 5 kind of rejected us. And I put it that way because we, of the 5, there are 2 that we were really excited about, and those two are the ones that found jobs elsewhere, which was kind of distressing, but it is what it is. God has His plan, and plan not only for us, but for them as well. And we had 3 that we decided not to move forward with for many different reasons, and I can expand on that if you'd like. The timelines, obviously PK is leaving sometime in April. I think his last Sunday is May 29th. Is that right? Yeah. So obviously we won't have a pastor in place by then, and we're not rushing to have a... Sorry?
We've got J.B.
Yeah, but he won't be that person that's replacing PK.
No, but he'll be temporary.
Yeah, but I'll get to there. So we won't have any pastor in place by then, but we have some pastors here. We have Pastor Jamie who can fill in, and then we have a church that has that we are familiar with. I think it's a church further south of here that has 5 pastors that they have volunteered that we could use their pastors as pulpit supply if and when we require a pulpit person to preach on a particular Sunday, which leads me to the next point, which is just to alert the elders. I guess I spoke with Dave a few weeks ago that so the elders should probably start scheduling pastors from 29th.
We have June, July already.
Yeah, so they have June and July already taken care of. So, yes.
Why aren't some of the people that you interview coming, preaching once in a while so we can see them?
Well, so you'll only see. All right. So Pete has now pushed me into the question and answer section. Thanks, Pete. So the reason is that we won't get to that point unless they've passed certain hurdles, right? For example, if we have an interview with a pastor, and there are certain things that the search committee thinks that they are either not aligned with what we believe, or there's some other issue that we think they may have that's not matching or fitting J.B.C., we won't get to the point of bringing them in to preach. We'll only get them to the point when they pass that other stage that we have passed. We have done like background checks and references. Once they get past those stages, that's when they'll come in, that you'll hear them preach.
I might understand you said you have 5 pastors, 3 of them you nixed right away, and then the other 2 are...
So we've had 5 big interviews.
John, repeat the question.
We can't hear the question.
Okay, anybody has can you turn on one of these other mics?
The batteries are out.
There's no batteries.
Okay, all right. So the question was, we have had 5 pastors, and the question was what the breakdown is 3 of.
The 2 that you like, they're unavailable now too?
Yeah. So I'll complete the question. So there are 5 pastors, and Don wants to know what happened to the 2 that we liked. So the 2 that we liked chose other positions elsewhere. So to be more detailed, one took a pastoral job in Florida, and the other one was toying, well, I shouldn't say toying, but was between becoming a missionary or remaining in the pastoral position. And so he took the missionary path. So those are the 2 that we liked.
So, do you have any favorites now?
So we don't have any. Go ahead. So the question is if we have any favorites now. No, we do not have any favorites now. No. So a question that would normally come up is, are we getting any closer? And the answer is we're 1 year closer than we were last year. We don't know what God has in store for us. What we do know is that we are in a lot of prayer, and we are very careful in making sure that we are absolutely positive that this is someone that God is leading to us. But we also have to remember that these godly gentlemen as well also are looking for the leading from God as well. So if they think that this is not the place for them to be for whatever reason it is, then it means that that's not what, God is not confused, right? We might be, but he's not. So whatever happens is going to be consistent on both sides. Other questions?
What are some of the reasons that you're disqualified?
Some of the reasons is like there's one person who... Yeah, Mike, can you give him?
Yeah, I'll just say what are some of the reasons. Pete asked what some of the reasons are that we would not be continuing on with some of the candidates.
So one person is, but I haven't given his name, so it's not like revealing something specific about him. But he struggles with being an introvert, which some of us thought that might be an issue because his ability to talk to a lot of people or meet with people. Well, he says he doesn't have a problem speaking from the pulpit, but in one-on-one conversation and such, he has a big, huge challenge. Some of us thought that it's something that could have been worked through, but there's enough folks in the group that thought this might have been a problem because, it might not manifest itself as a problem immediately, but as time goes on, it may manifest itself. That's one reason. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat.
Okay. All right. So you said somewhat. Why not fully?
I think we've been through that same thing with other pastors, right, before, that a little bit introverted.
Oh yeah. Well, which is why we don't want to go through it again. Yes. Right there, Carol.
So how do you find more candidates to interview?
Okay, so we go through this. So we have this website that gives us a bunch of resumes, right? Thousands of resumes. And we go through each resume and we look at certain things that are obvious that wouldn't fit us. Like, for example, if they're a particular denomination that we don't, our charismatic group, whatever, we have different things that we look through immediately. Some pastors don't want to relocate. Some pastors want to live in Florida. As you heard from Pastor Jamie today, Florida is not the same thing as New Jersey. So we go through the resumes and then I give them we have three local teams, 3 teams within our search committee. I usually give the resumes to the different teams and then they do a further search. And then we determine from that which pastors should go to that next step. Because like for example, I'll give you an example. One pastor recently, one of the more recent ones, he had what I would consider relatively, I wouldn't say stellar, but good qualifications. But in the response to one of his questions, one of the questions that we have on the questionnaire, which is, by the way, on the website if you wanted to see it, was his view about marriage. And he mentioned that when, early in his ministry, he believed that marriage was between a man and a woman. But now he's having more thoughts that he's more open now to accept that that's not necessarily the case, right? So those are the kind of things that will pop up in a question that you don't see initially, but you'll see in a questionnaire. Or maybe if it doesn't show up in the questionnaire, it'll show up in an interview. So these are the kind of things that will pop up.
Yeah, just the other thing too, I'll just mention, and while I'm bringing this over to Cindy, is a lot of times we get links to their sermons. So the subcommittees are evaluating their group. We see our resumes, we evaluate them as to whether we should send them a questionnaire or whether we should check them off the list. A lot of times they're not qualified, bottom line. Some of the resumes we get, we're not even sure why they were set in the first place. They come from some of these online engines generate more resumes than you could. It's a typical HR thing. So, but a lot of times when we see the links to the sermons, that's also an issue. If they're not effective preachers, then it's a preaching and teaching pastor, so they need to be effective preachers. One second.
My question is a little off, in a different direction, I don't mean, but as interim pastors, have you considered having some of our missionaries preach on Sundays and Pastor Pendel preaching on Sundays? A lot of our missionaries are close by and could
Yeah.
be used as, that's just a consideration.
That's an elder question.
Yeah, I can answer that one too. Actually, I reached out to Pastor Pendel. He is not available. So he's already provided that. However, we have reached out to, I'll just give you an idea, over the last week or two, Ken Kirby, Tim Monahan, and so on. They're all coming over the next 2 months, at least once over June and July. You'll see Ken Kirby, you'll see Tim Monahan, you'll see Jim Guttaker, Tom Joffroy, Gary Wetzel. We're lucky that we have within our midst some very capable preachers. Okay. Okay.
Dave, you have to.
Oh, I'm sorry. The whites are also available. They're in Chicago right now. They're our missionaries to Ukraine. And
Discuss it with the elders. They booted me off the elder group, elder board last December, so I can't help you with that. Any other questions?
Pastor Jamie.
Pastor Jamie, yes. Yeah, Pastor Jamie is, he's a given inside the rotation, right? And he will preach whenever he's available and can preach, right? He's not prepared at this particular moment to preach on every Sunday, but whenever he's called, and he'll be willing to preach. All we're saying is that there are, we have a schedule, sorry, I'm in America, a schedule that of pastors, both of inside the church and for pulpit supply. So that's been covered. Brian has a question mentioned. Not the singer, the other one.
Yeah, this is probably more directed toward the elders. One of the qualifications for an elder is apt to teach, as the scriptures tell us. So my question is there any opportunity, or has it been discussed whether or not some of the elders would be possibly preaching as well in that rotation?
Yes. But, and actually I thought of you, brother. But yeah, we have actually talked about that. Tom Joffroy is going to be preaching at least twice over the next 2 months. I'm actually thinking about it myself. It would be kind of a stretch for me, but right now, to be honest, I was pleasantly in answer to prayer that these brothers that have been part of this church for all this time are stepping up. So God's filling the pulpit. When the time is right, yes, we have been thinking about that. It would be a good opportunity for other elders to take that step of faith that you took, my brother, when you did it. And I still remember it like it was yesterday. So.
Other questions? Yes.
Just a general question regarding all the pulpit supply. Are the people who are going to be preaching, are they going to come with their own topics, or do we at J.B.C. say these are the things that we need to talk about? Today's message is exactly what we need to hear. Unity, move forward, the idea of accepting and embracing change is all part of it. And so I don't know if that's something that you guys do, or?
Well, basically, in my communications, I've been, because I reached out each man individually. First of all, Pastor Jamie has specifically requested to preach the first week in June, which will be the first week that PK is no longer with us, so that he can do that. He can set the tone for that. And then what I'm trying to do, and Erin's helping me with, she's offered to do process guidelines for the guest speakers. We're going to try to give them an idea of what our focus is and what our need is. They're all aware that it's a time of transition, so they're all familiar with the need. And I'm trying to set a placeholder for what topics and messages they'll be preaching on, so that we can kind of have some communication with them as we get closer to their week. So it's something that I've been thinking too, is it would be good to get those kinds of messages coordinated. For example, Ken Kirby founded the church. So to hear what is on his heart about where we're at now, I think would be very helpful for us all to hear. So yeah, I think that I'm not sure exactly, how to do that, but that's the intent. is to try to get the messages kind of, synced. So, because we need to hear from different perspectives.
So one of the challenges that we have is obviously this has been going on a year, so over time, people kind of get wilted and distressed and despondent and depressed, and so we request a lot of prayer for everyone on the teams because especially when we see someone that we're excited about, and then we don't get a chance to either say no, but they end up saying no, it's deflating. And so those are the times where we have to really dig in and pray more and ask for renewal of heart, spirit, mind, whatever it is that we need to get motivated some more. So that's one of the things that we would request in prayer, is just a continued commitment for everyone on the search team, to search committee, to continue to do what it is that God has called us to do. Because it's, I've heard it, this whole process can take 2 years, 3 years, whatever the case is. But we have a very diverse group of people, which was done deliberately. But because we have a diverse group of people, we also have different likes and dislikes. So we have to try to maintain a unity of spirit in understanding that we're not looking for a personal favorite, but somebody who fits our church as best as we know how, right? And in the discussions that we have with these candidates, the discussions that they, in all these discussions, we'll find out what's on their heart, their style of preaching, the way they relate to church office staff, their management or leadership abilities or preferences. For example, do they like to go on, are they like a lone ranger, or do they work collaborating with others? Those are kind of things that we have to be careful not to pick based on our own personal preferences. And so with a diverse group, you have different likes, and so we have to be, we ask for prayer for a unity of hearts and minds, and that we put ourselves in the background, because it's not about any one of us, actually. So we ask for prayer for that. Yes, Alice. Alice, but not Dick.
I was wondering how many people you have on the 3 groups, and are that many people really necessary? Is that hindering your consensus?
Okay, very good question. So we have on total on the search group we have 14. So the reason why we have 14 is because the Constitution requires all the elders to be a part. When we formed the search committee, and what the desire was to ensure that we also have people who are not on the elder board to be a part of it as well. So we came up with 7 other folks. So that's why we have 14. Now, within the 14, we have 3 groups. So let me rephrase. So 14 minus 2 pastors, because they're not really officially a part of any of the teams. PK and PJ give me their feedback separately, because because they're pastors, their voice may be a bit louder just based on the fact that they're pastors. So, and they may sway opinion one way or the other. So they're not really a part of a team, but they're counted in the 14. So among that other 12, we have 3 teams. There's a team called Team Galilee, which has 3 people. And there's a team called Team Olives, which has a bunch of people, I think, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 5. And then Team Carmel has 4, I think, 4 or 5. So that's how it's broken down. So to answer that second question, yeah, we do need that number, because I would not want to have 7 elders and 2 other people or 3 other people. I think it's good to have members from the congregation play a vital role. I don't think it's really, I think we're at the point now where we fully understand that it's not about our own personal preferences. Yes, we can give an input of, well, I don't like how this guy preaches, or I don't like, he doesn't have any hair, whatever the case is. But some of those things we understand as a group, that if we're down to a point where the decision is going to be made based on whether or not we like how he preaches, not in terms of what he delivers, but just his style, for example, then it might not be the thing to say, okay, we're out with him because we don't like his style, right? Something more concrete, for example, would be he believes that that Jesus' second coming is already here, right? Let's say, now those kinds of things. If one person on the search team, somehow figures that out, because we have a lot of people, and some people pick out some things that other people haven't seen because they do further research and so on, right? So they may pick, I think in one case, I remember way back when Erin had found something that nobody else saw. And that was something that was very significant. And so that just ruled that person out immediately. So it all depends on, so although there can be differences, it depends on what those differences are. And yes, it's still a challenge though. I won't say no, it's still a challenge because we have such a diverse group of people. But I think that's a necessary thing for us to have, the diversity. Diversity but unity is kind of what we're kind of looking at.
Just to add that a little bit, I'm on Team Olives, which is where Erin's our kind of our leader. She kind of keeps us on track. 1 week we might have no resumes to review. We meet every Monday, virtually. Another week we may have 15. So for all of us to review 15 resumes, and a lot of times we have a relatively short period of time to do that, we've decided that Erin basically assigns 4 or 5 to each of us. So it's not just a matter of handling the volume between 3 committees. Even each individual committee sometimes divides up the resumes between us, and then we go over them together. So that's just another way of explaining why it's helpful to have 14 people working on it.
Other questions? Okay. Over there. I don't like this, so I'll let him go first.
Okay, do you have a certain feeling about the eschatologies and whether they're 5-point Calvinists or all those kinds of issues? Do you have that down pat as to what you're looking for?
Yeah, we do, and we ask that question generally in the interviews. We have a couple of those questions inside the questionnaire itself that ask about eschatological beliefs. But normally, there's one guy who went straight into give us like 2 pages of stuff. But some people usually answer that relatively briefly, and we'll ask that more detailed during an interview. And depending on what the answer is, then we'll make a decision from there. 1 second.
Is there an override in that when somebody is really good, they're going to be snatched up very quickly. And if the process of finding them is very laborious, you're going to miss a lot of good candidates. If somebody really good comes up, is there a way to super put them forward, or how can you address somebody that you all kind of indicate are good, but you need to move fast in order to get them?
Yeah, so there is no official go to the front of the line, but if somebody is really good, we'll get excited about it, and by chance it'll go much faster. One of the things that we had a meeting on Monday, just to address that point. We had a meeting on Monday, this past Monday. Was it Monday? Yeah. Thursday, right? Search committee Thursday, where because right now I think one of the weaknesses that we have is that because the underlying thing is that we're dependent on God to take this forward as we go, that we sometimes don't go as fast as we should. And so we have now put timelines on how we should respond to the candidates and approach them more quickly than we have been doing. But having said that though, I don't think we have lost anyone because of time, because the 2 that were really good were 2 that decided that they were not interested anymore because of different reasons. Does that answer your question? You still look puzzled? Okay, all right.
I just want to have a little bit of clarity regarding Pastor Ken's kind of the timeline. He's retiring officially May 29th, or that's his last
Yeah.
Sunday. Just so I can help particularly my older daughter kind of navigate. Will he be around? Will he be moving and leaving? Just so I can have an understanding.
So he has a house in Pennsylvania, and I think he'll be moving there. I know he'll be moving there. Now, it's possible that he may come back every now and then. I'm sure he will do that. But officially, he'll be leaving on that day.
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, we have a church constitution, so whichever candidate we choose, he should he should agree with our church constitution, right?
Yeah, so the question was, we have a church constitution, and should whoever we're choosing follow the church constitution? And the answer is yes, he has to follow the church constitution.
Do you start with that?
We don't necessarily start with that, but all the candidates that we have looked at in detail have gotten a copy of our church constitution. But if we ask for a questionnaire to be filled out, and the person didn't fill out the questionnaire, then there's no reason to send them the church constitution.
Yeah, John, we also have a church profile that basically is kind of a snapshot of our mission statement, our statement of faith, all of that, what kind of ministries we have. It's a very concise profile that these candidates have access to, so they get to know us a little bit better too. But what we've been finding is a lot of them are checking us out on live stream. So they told us that.
Victor.
Hi, I think you mentioned that Pastor Ken is assisting with the search committee, and my question is, will his role after he leaves on May 29th perhaps be reevaluated?
Yeah. So PK is very unofficial. I will not be sending him information afterwards, but I still value what he thinks about the person who will be coming in next. Obviously, he's not going to have a vote, but I still would like for him to know, or for us to know, what his thoughts are.
Understood.
Yeah. You're younger, you can walk faster.
Just a couple of things. I was just wondering, as far as candidates, we have Christian radio.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a great resource. I mean, I listen to 570, which comes right out of New York City.
You have to speak up, please.
570 AM radio comes right out of New York City, an excellent all-Christian radio station, as well as very local in Manahawkin, which is an FM station. I listen to two different ones, and they're in this area.
Mm-hmm.
If those two stations, you could have to call the owners of the station, but they do advertisements and spots related to other ministries, or that would be maybe an opening that they would be hearing about Jackson Baptist is seeking a pastor. Not having to go into any detail, accepting the fact, so that if anybody, whoever's listening to Christian radio would be hearing that.
Yeah.
Whether they want to hear it or not, it's part of the programming. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so
And as a resource, and the other thing is, we've got Carn University, which used to be Philadelphia College of the Bible. They're all going to be graduating very soon. All these schools are going to be, people are graduating.
Mm-hmm.
What better way to have other people, there's got to be people that are considering the pastorate that are going to be graduating in some of these classes all over the United States. But there may be some very close, like Keswick, an example. People all the time, there's a lot of, that's local. There may be people that are local, but they're not aware of it. And if they're not on the wavelength, or whatever you call it, techie stuff, I don't even know the lingo.
Yeah, so...
they would have no way, but if you can reach out just person to person, church to church, somebody could say, oh, so-and-so is coming, they might be interested. So it's just possibilities.
Yeah, so
That's all.
the issue about the Christian radio, that's something we can explore further. I know it is not a secret, or it's quite known that we're looking for a new pastor. We know that for a fact. And in fact, we have used some external, Christianity Today and so on, we have used them as well. But we haven't recently looked at anybody who is local. And that's something that we can actually do. And Erin, can you remind me of that, please? Yeah, because I won't remember after I leave this room.
John,
Let me finish up. And the other part about Kieran, the people who are graduating from Kieran would not have the experience that we're looking for if they're new graduates. So, you know, if we're looking for maybe a youth pastor or... Yeah, well, that's covered. That stuff is covered. But people who are like readily graduate, because we have seen people from Philadelphia, from Kieran. We have gotten resumes from Kieran as well. But we wouldn't be looking at those people unless they've graduated from some time ago and have had pastoral experience. But we have, you know, we're looking at Princeton Theological Seminary, Liberty, Moody. We're looking at I almost said cemeteries, seminaries all over the country and in fact the world.
Hey, John, there was also one candidate that actually found out about our job search on a podcast. Found out about it on a podcast. He heard about it on a podcast.
One of the candidates, one of the more recent ones, the Christianity Today podcast, he was one that we were really excited about. And he's the one that decided to go into, he had a part-time job with a missionary group, and he decided to take a full-time job there. So we lost him because of that. But yeah, it's been around. But yeah, I don't think we have recently focused on, over the air media recently, so we can probably, we should probably increase our coverage there. Questions? More questions? Going once, going thrice. I don't know what 2 is, so I skip. All right, so I'd like to first of all, before I go, I'd like to just acknowledge those who are on the search team. If you're here, could you just search teams? Could you please stand? Yeah, please give them a round of applause. They've been quite helpful. They've been quite helpful, and they generally keep me in line. Brother Tom is not officially on it, but he gives his input at times. And have you ever tried a link that I gave you? Okay, all right.
I had other links, and I've seen some of the others.
Okay, all right, good. And if we get to a point where we think it's time for you to listen to sermons and so on, we'll be happy to give it for you to see it, because it gives us a better feel for what the congregation would think. But nobody will be. So one thing you need to remember: whatever the search committee chooses, when we present that person to the congregation, it's a recommendation from the committee, right? It's not, here, take this person, and this is how, you have to vote on that person. It's not, we are just giving, it's a recommendation that we are giving to the congregation that this is a person that we're recommending. If the person doesn't float your boat or get you excited for some reason, when the vote comes, prayerfully, please do what you think God is leading you to do. And also, when for our part of the process, it's confidential, and mostly because some of these pastors do not want their present churches to know that they're looking. And so if I give you a name, for example, it may somehow get to that church that the person is looking, right? And that is not something that we would want to undermine the whole process. So just bear with us. Some of the pastors, I think 2 of them, in fact, all of them, I remember, they don't mind as long as the process is very close to for example, if we're about to look at references, they say, okay, at this particular point, they don't mind, but anywhere before that, they just don't want their name to be broadcast anywhere. I saw a hand back there.
Yeah, the candidates also have a percentage that they'll accept coming to a church. Well, most of the candidates have a percentage that they set for themselves, that the church, when they vote, reaches that percentage. If not, they won't even come here. So it's important to vote, you know, when the vote is taken.
Okay, so I don't have anything else. I'm out of ideas. So unless there are any more questions, if you have questions, you can send it to, I'll throw you under the bus, jbcelders@gmail.com or jbcsearch@gmail.com, or you can just send me email or something. We really, really, truly crave your prayers. We need it. I don't want to go as far as to say we demand it, but we do really need your prayers for guidance and wisdom and discernment and all that stuff that we need. And in closing, I'd just like to reference something that Pastor Jamie said about the lion. If you ever watch National Geographic or Smithsonian or one of those places, and you watch the safari, and look at the lions trying to catch a group, a family, they only catch anybody in that group when there's somebody out, when there's an animal that's not with the family. When there's always a unified family, the lion always ends up getting nothing, right? And so, in the same token, we need us to stay together. We know we have different preferences, but pray for each other. Feel free to ask me any question you want on the search. As long as it doesn't violate somebody's privacy, I'll give you an answer. But try to remain unified as a group, because we know that when we're unified, that's what God wants. And not only that, but that's when we are, by definition, stronger as well. So that message today was really, really applicable to what we're doing. And we really thank Brother Jamie, although he decided that he's going to leave me alone up here. All right, so without any further ado, I'll ask Brother Dave to close in prayer.
We're counting them right now, so.
Oh, you counting? Oh, so this was part of the business meeting? I thought this was separate. Okay.
You were the main attraction.
Oh, I was the main attraction? Shut up. Sorry, question?
We need motions to vote.
Oh, yeah, well, that's you.
So I think we probably need a motion. First, I think we did the one on Aaron Gregg already, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion on the retaining of the capital campaign. Motion by Aaron Seberg, seconded by Tom Joffroy. And then we'll have the count.
It's about the campaign. It is. Do we have any idea how much more money we need? We have 1.2 million.
Right.
What is the cost of this building?
Well, we've been told, I think I may have mentioned this in the past, but we've been told about $200 a square foot, which would come out to about 1.8. But Michael Campbell, our architect, is actually waiting for, and probably should be have gotten in. I need to follow up with him. I had asked him if he got his bids in. He had put out requests for bids to 3 general contractors. Typically, especially these days, with the supply chain problems that are affecting the construction industry globally, the costs are not going to be any lower. They're probably going to be higher. We've also, Walsh Associates, when we interviewed them, made some very good points, because they do this for a living, about the fact that it's not just the construction of the building, it's the outfitting of the building once it's built. For example, this new building has a multipurpose room that's fitted with basically a basketball court, but one of the other objectives is to be able to gather everybody that could, if we were able to fill this room and fill every seat in that building, we could put the same number of people around tables and have a dinner because the brand new kitchen would be right next door. So we would need tables for that. We don't have those tables now. So the furnishing as well as the sound equipment that would have to go with it. So there's always more than you anticipate in just the construction of the building itself. So I know I didn't give you an actual number, but I would say 1.8 is probably the minimum target that we should be shooting for. One of the things I failed to mention before is you might wonder why would we spend this kind of money for a consultant to come in? And I imagine that same question got asked when phase 1 was done, but typically these consultants through an organized fundraising campaign raise anywhere from 1.5 to 3 times the amount of your annual budget. So our annual budget is about, and both firms asked for copies of our annual budget, copies of our giving records, and so on. If our annual budget's around $500,000 a year, figure 1.5 to 3 times that is what they're usually successful in doing. And they basically Walsh Associates provided us with a guarantee. So there's actually a refund involved if they fail to do that. So that's the best I can tell you. It's really amount of, you have to spend this amount of money to be able to raise the balance. The goal would be that we don't have to take out any mortgage at all for this building. So hopefully did I answer your question, Edie?
Yeah, so they're guaranteeing that they're going to raise 3 times. Is that what you said?
I said anywhere from 1.5 to 3 times your annual budget.
Our annual budget.
Yeah, a lot of that depends on,
It's like $1 million.
but it's more like almost $3 million. Yeah, that they could raise, right?
I don't think it's a guarantee, though. It's just a typical thing that what happens generally.
Well, they believe their success rate is such that they can give it make a guarantee that we could effectively we would get a refund if they had failed.
Oh, wow. And the refund would be exactly what we need to finish the building, right?
No, they're only getting like $49,000 out of a $2 million.
So I think there's the result of the vote.
Yes, Justin said that overwhelmingly yes for both items that we voted on.
Appreciate that, everyone. Hey.
Mako Swan.
What did Billy say? We didn't hear back there.
She said that for both things you voted on, they were voted yes overwhelmingly.
Crystal's got a back. I think what Crystal said is that she said, how much what's the balance? Right.
We're going to raise it from J.B.C. alone?
Well, that's a question for them, but I think generally they start with a bottom, and they have a specific method that they follow to be able to raise the funds. So each one of us obviously is going to have their own conversation with God about what they're prepared to donate for that particular project. But it's not necessarily, one thing we do, and we've made very clear to the campaign consultants, is this church doesn't have bake sales, doesn't have car washes we don't do fundraising that way. So this is really a bit more about stewardship, and that's really, and most likely the messages that will be coming from the pulpit will be coordinated with the idea of stewardship and having that be the focus for that in terms of trying to get to that point. One of the other things we've talked to the consultants about is the fact that we have a very important pledge period of time called Faithful Giving Promise that's dedicated to our missionaries, and we don't want there to be a conflict between the two of those. And we also are sensitive to the fact that people are already, and especially in this body, people already give sacrificially. So that's why we need, nobody on the building committee is an expert on how to get to that point where we are comfortable that we have enough to start the building. And that's kind of one of the reasons why we're investing in that kind of expertise. So, if that helps.
And what was the dollar amount we still need?
Well, we have about 1.2, at minimum about 600,000, but that's probably a starting point. Especially since we're not sure how these bids are coming back, because if they're pricing out lumber, steel, all the materials that are out there now, with the cost of construction, it's not gonna be cheap, and then we may have to make a decision as to whether we're willing to, how badly do we want this building, and this building is necessary to, our youth in the wintertime have no place to go, because their basketball hoops are in the parking lot. So there's a lot that building can provide us with that we don't have now, especially in terms of our own facility use. Trying to find a place for meetings with a lot of us meet in the kitchen. We only have certain meeting rooms at Fellowship Halls, a lot of times double, triple books. Sometimes the bell choir wants to rehearse at the same time as the worship team. So there's a lot of reasons why we need the building, but we also recognize that we just came through a pandemic, and that a lot of people are hurting financially, or at least strained financially. So this is not an easy decision, but we feel like with what we've done so far and how far we've come with the building committee, that the last step is, how do we pay the balance of it? We would be a little concerned about starting a building and not knowing if we have enough money to finish the building. There's nothing worse than a half-built project. So these are not easy questions. This is not an easy time. We're trying to find a senior pastor. At the same time, we're planning a building project. So what John had asked for in terms of your prayers, no more critical time in our past, I think, or in our future than now. So. Yes. Our secretary. No. Millie's just reminded me that we haven't had a motion to adjourn yet, but I want to make sure all the questions are answered. I think Bonnie mentioned move to adjourn. Second? Second. I got about 5 seconds. I'll take John Smith. Motion, all in favor? Aye. Thank you for staying with us and your prayers. Appreciate it.